The roar of gunfire shattered the midnight silence as Clara Sullivan clutched her 3-month-old daughter Emma to her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs. Smoke billowed through the cracks beneath her bedroom door, the acrid scent of burning wood filling her lungs as she frantically searched for an escape. Her husband Thomas had been dead for less than a day, murdered by the very men who now set fire to their modest Colorado homestead, and Clara knew, with terrifying certainty, that she and her baby would be next if she didn't act quickly. It was 1875 in the untamed territory outside Denver, Colorado, and Clara Sullivan had just become a widow at 22. "Hold on, sweet girl," Clara whispered, wrapping Emma more securely in her blanket. The baby whimpered softly, seemingly sensing her mother's terror as Clara pushed open the bedroom window, the cool night air a momentary relief from the suffocating smoke. The drop to the ground below was at least 15 feet too far to jump safely while holding an infant. Clara's eyes darted desperately across the property, illuminated by the growing flames consuming the front of her home. That's when she spotted him, a lone figure on horseback approaching at full gallop, silhouetted against the night sky. As the rider drew closer, Clara could make out the broad shoulders of a man beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He dismounted with surprising grace for someone of his size and rushed toward the house, stopping directly beneath her window. "Jump," he called up, his voice deep and steady despite the chaos. "I'll catch you both," Clara hesitated, clutching her baby tighter. The stranger below removed his hat, revealing a face she couldn't quite make out in the darkness. "The name's Isaiah O'Malley, madam. I saw the fire from the ridge. You ain't got much time, that roof's fixing to cave." "I swear on my life I'll catch you both." The splintering of wood behind her and a fresh surge of smoke made Clara's decision for her. With a silent prayer, she climbed awkwardly onto the windowsill, her trembling legs dangling over the edge. "The baby first," Isaiah called, positioning himself directly below. "I can't let her go," Clara cried, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. "You have to trust me," Isaiah replied, his voice somehow cutting through her panic. "I won't let anything happen to either of you, I promise." The bedroom door behind her cracked with heat, flames licking at the wood. With no choice left, Clara extended her arms, holding Emma out into the night air. "Please," she whispered, and released her most precious possession into the hands of a complete stranger. Isaiah caught the bundled infant with gentle precision, immediately cradling her against his chest with one arm while extending the other back up toward Clara. "Now you, madam. Quick now." Clara took one last look at the burning remnants of the life she'd built, then closed her eyes and pushed herself from the ledge. For a terrifying moment, she was falling through darkness, and then strong arms enveloped her, absorbing the impact as they both tumbled to the ground. The air rushed from Clara's lungs as they landed, Isaiah taking the brunt of the fall. He'd managed to keep Emma safe, held carefully away from their bodies as they fell. Within seconds, Isaiah was back on his feet, pulling Clara up with his free hand. "My horse is just there," he said, guiding her away from the inferno that had been her home. "We need to move. Whoever did this might still be around." Clara stumbled alongside him, reaching for her baby. Isaiah carefully transferred Emma back to her mother's arms before helping them both onto his horse. He swung up behind Clara, one arm securing her and the baby against his chest as he urged the horse into motion. "Hold tight," he instructed as they galloped away from the property, the crackling flames fading behind them. Clara's mind reeled with shock and grief as they rode. Everything she owned was gone. Her husband was dead. And now she was fleeing into the night with a stranger whose face she still couldn't clearly see. But as Emma quieted against her chest, soothed by the rhythmic movement of the horse, Clara realized that for this moment, at least, they were alive. They rode in silence for what seemed like hours, the only sounds the steady drumming of hooves and Emma's occasional whimper. Finally, as the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky, Isaiah slowed the horse to a walk. "There's a creek up ahead," he said, his voice close to her ear. "We'll stop there, rest the horse." As they approached the water, Clara got her first real look at her rescuer. Isaiah O'Malley was tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered by sun and wind. He couldn't have been more than 30, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of the Colorado sky. A thin scar traced from his right temple to his cheekbone, but it did nothing to diminish the kindness in his expression. He helped Clara down from the horse with careful hands, then busied himself with leading the animal to drink while she settled on a fallen log, adjusting Emma in her arms. "Thank you," Clara said finally, her voice hoarse from smoke and crying. "You saved our lives." Isaiah nodded, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. "No thanks needed, madam. I'm just glad I was passing by when I was." He hesitated before asking, "Those men who burned your place, they the same ones who killed Thomas Sullivan?" Clara's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "How do you know my husband's name?" Isaiah's expression turned grim. "News travels fast, even out here. Word came to town yesterday that Thomas Sullivan was shot dead at Harkin's saloon, something about a card game gone wrong." He paused. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Sullivan." "Clara," she corrected automatically, her mind struggling to process everything. "But how did you know where to find us? Our homestead is miles from town." Isaiah crouched down, filling his canteen in the creek before offering it to her. "I didn't, not exactly. I was heading back to my own place when I saw the fire, didn't know whose house it was until I got closer." He watched as she took a grateful sip of water. "Those men, did you see them?" Clara shook her head. "I was asleep when it started. Thomas didn't come home last night, but I'm used to him staying in town sometimes after." She trailed off, unwilling to speak ill of her husband, especially now that he was gone. Thomas's gambling habit had caused more problems than she cared to admit, but he hadn't deserved to die for it. Isaiah seemed to understand her reluctance. "The Blackwell brothers run that card game, mean sons of," he caught himself, glancing at the baby, "mean men, if Thomas won anything substantial off them." "The deed," Clara whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "He took our land deed to that game. He said he was going to double our money, that we'd be able to expand the farm." Tears welled in her eyes again. "I begged him not to, but he was so sure he'd win." Isaiah's expression darkened. "The Blackwells don't like to lose, and they don't play fair. If Thomas won that deed back from them somehow, they'd kill him for it," Clara finished, clutching Emma tighter, "and then come to find it, which means they'll be looking for you," Isaiah confirmed, standing again and scanning the horizon. "The deed, do you have it?" Clara shook her head. "If Thomas won it back, he must have had it on him when he was killed." Isaiah considered this information. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Denver's too close, they'll look for you there first." He thought for a moment. "I have a small ranch about half a day's ride from here. It's not much, but you and the little one can rest there while we figure out what to do." Clara hesitated. Going with an unfamiliar man to an isolated ranch seemed risky, no matter how kind he'd been so far. As if sensing her concern, Isaiah stepped back, giving her space. "I understand your caution, Mrs. Sullivan. If you'd prefer, I can take you to the Wilsons' place. They're about an hour's ride from here, good folks with daughters about your age." The consideration in his offer reassured Clara. "No," she decided. "If the Blackwells are looking for me, I don't want to endanger anyone else." She looked down at Emma, now sleeping peacefully despite everything. "Your ranch will do fine, Mr. O'Malley, at least until I can figure out where to go from here." Isaiah nodded, offering a small smile. "Isaiah, please, if we're going to be hiding out together, seems formal to stand on ceremony." For the first time since her world had exploded, Clara felt the ghost of a smile touch her lips. "Isaiah, then." They rode more slowly now that immediate danger was behind them. Isaiah sitting behind Clara, but maintaining a respectful distance as much as possible on horseback. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Clara learned that Isaiah had come to Colorado 5 years earlier from Missouri, saving enough from his work as a ranch hand to buy his own small spread 2 years ago. It's nothing fancy, he explained as they crested a hill around midday, revealing a modest cabin nestled in a valley below, a small corral and barn set off to one side. But the roof doesn't leak, and there's good grazing for the few head of cattle I'm raising. The cabin was indeed simple but well maintained, with a vegetable garden to one side and a covered porch running along the front. Isaiah helped Clara down from the horse, then carried their few possessions inside while she tended to Emma. The interior was surprisingly comfortable, a single room with a stone fireplace at one end, a sturdy table with chairs, a curtained-off sleeping area, and basic cooking implements. Everything was neat and organized, unexpected in a bachelor's home. "You'll take the bed," Isaiah said, setting down his saddlebags. "I'll bunk in the barn." "I can't put you out of your home," Clara protested. "You're not putting me anywhere. It's my choice," he replied with gentle firmness. "You and the little one need proper rest. I've slept in worse places than my own barn." As Isaiah busied himself starting a fire and preparing a simple meal, Clara took the opportunity to properly clean and feed Emma, using the basin of water he'd brought in. The baby was remarkably calm given the circumstances, watching Clara with wide, trusting eyes. "She's a good baby," Isaiah commented as he set plates of beans and cornbread on the table. "What's her name?" "Emma," Clara answered, joining him at the table with the baby cradled in one arm. "Emma Grace Sullivan. She's 3 months old." Isaiah's eyes softened as he looked at the infant. "She has your eyes." Clara glanced down at her daughter's clear blue gaze. "Thomas always said the same thing." The mention of her husband brought a fresh wave of grief, but also confusion. Their marriage hadn't been perfect, far from it, but she had loved him once, before the gambling and drinking had taken hold. "How long were you married?" Isaiah asked carefully, sensing her mixed emotions. 3 years, Clara replied. "We came out from Pennsylvania after Thomas heard about the Homestead Act. He had big dreams of building a cattle empire." She sighed. The reality was harder than the dream. Isaiah nodded in understanding. "Always is. Land's unforgiving out here if you don't respect it." They ate in companionable silence, the events of the past 24 hours catching up with Clara as exhaustion settled into her bones. Isaiah noticed her struggling to keep her eyes open and gently took her empty plate. "Get some rest," he said. "You're safe here for now. We'll figure out the next steps when you've had some sleep." Too tired to argue, Clara made her way to the curtained bed, settling Emma beside her. As she drifted toward sleep, she heard Isaiah moving quietly around the cabin, banking the fire and gathering his things to head to the barn. Despite everything, despite the danger still lurking and the uncertainty of her future, Clara felt an unexpected sense of security in this stranger's home. Her last conscious thought before sleep claimed her was that Isaiah O'Malley had the kindest eyes she'd ever seen. The next few days established a cautious routine. Isaiah rode into the nearest town, a small settlement called Cedar Ridge, about an hour away, to gather news and supplies, returning with the information that Thomas Sullivan's body had been claimed by the undertaker in Denver, but that no one had come looking for his widow yet. "It won't last," he warned as they sat on the porch one evening, Emma sleeping soundly in a makeshift cradle Isaiah had constructed from an old crate. "The Blackwells are methodical. If they think you have something they want, they'll keep looking." Clara sighed, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson. "But I don't have anything. The deed was lost with Thomas." "They don't know that," Isaiah pointed out, "and there's another problem. Without that deed, you can't prove ownership of your land. Even if the Blackwells weren't a threat, you'd have trouble holding onto the property." It was a harsh reality Clara had been avoiding. Everything she and Thomas had worked for was effectively gone. Even if she could return to their homestead now, probably nothing but ashes she had no legal claim to rebuild. "I need to go to Denver," she said suddenly. "To the marshal's office. Maybe Thomas had the deed on him when he was killed. It might be with his personal effects." Isaiah's expression turned troubled. "It's risky," Denver's the first place they'll be watching. What choice do I have? Clara asked, frustration edging into her voice. I can't hide forever. I have Emma to think about, and I have nothing, no home, no money, no future. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the darkening horizon. You could stay here, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral, at least until we figure out a safer way to handle this. The offer hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to address. In the days they'd spent together, Clara had come to appreciate Isaiah's quiet strength and unfailing kindness. He treated her with respect, never presuming or pushing boundaries, and with Emma, he showed a gentle patience that tugged at something deep in Clara's heart. But she was a recent widow with a newborn, and he was a man she'd known less than a week. No matter how safe she felt in his presence, the propriety of their arrangement was questionable at best. I appreciate your generosity, she began carefully, but I can't impose on you indefinitely. People would talk, and you've done enough already by taking us in. Isaiah turned to face her, his expression earnest in the fading light. I don't give a damn what people say, Clara. You and Emma are welcome here as long as you need. No strings, no expectations. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. I know what it's like to be alone with nowhere to turn. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, especially not a mother with a baby. Something in his tone made Clara wonder about his past, about the experiences that had shaped this solitary man with such a generous heart. But before she could ask, Emma stirred in her cradle, her small face scrunching as she woke hungry. As Clara lifted her daughter to feed her, Isaiah discreetly excused himself to tend to the horses, giving her privacy. Watching him walk toward the barn, straight-backed and steady, Clara realized that for the first time since Thomas's death, she was considering a future uncertain as it was rather than just surviving the present. The following morning, they reached a compromise. Isaiah would ride to Denver alone to inquire about Thomas's personal effects, while Clara and Emma remained safely at the ranch. He would also stop by their burned homestead to see if anything might be salvaged. I should be back by tomorrow evening, Isaiah said as he prepared to leave, checking his saddlebags and the revolver holstered at his hip. Keep the doors locked, and there's a shotgun under the bed if you need it. Clara nodded, trying to mask her anxiety at being left alone. Be careful. If you see any sign of the Blackwells, I'll steer clear, he promised. This is just reconnaissance, nothing more. Still, as she watched him ride away, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this brief peace they'd found was about to be shattered. She spent the day keeping busy tending the garden, caring for Emma, and preparing a stew from the vegetables Isaiah had brought back from town. As night fell with no sign of his return, Clara told herself it was reasonable Denver was at least 6 hours' ride each way, and his business there might take time. But when the second day passed with no Isaiah, genuine worry set in. By the third morning, Clara was pacing the cabin, debating her options. Should she take Emma and try to reach Cedar Ridge, or wait longer, hoping Isaiah would return? The decision was made for her when, shortly after noon, she heard the approach of horses plural and the sound of men's voices. Heart pounding, Clara grabbed Emma and the shotgun, retreating to the back of the cabin. Peering through the small window, she counted 3 riders approaching, none of them Isaiah. With mounting dread, she recognized one of the men as Joel Blackwell, the elder of the notorious brothers, his distinctive red beard unmistakable even at a distance. They had found her. Clara quickly evaluated her options. The cabin had only 2 exits, the front door and a small rear window barely large enough for her to squeeze through. The men were approaching from the front, their pace unhurried, confident. They hadn't surrounded the place yet. Working quickly, Clara bundled Emma in her blanket and secured her in a makeshift sling across her chest. She grabbed a small sack of provisions Isaiah had prepared for emergencies, slung it over her shoulder, and eased the rear window open as quietly as possible. The men's voices grew louder as they reached the cabin. Looks like someone's home, one called, smoke coming from the chimney. O'Malley, Joel Blackwell's voice boomed. We know you're harboring the Sullivan woman. Come on out and we'll make this easy. Clara's blood ran cold. What had happened to Isaiah? Had they caught him in Denver? With no time to consider the possibilities, she squeezed through the window, Emma secured against her chest, and dropped quietly to the ground outside. The barn was 30 yards away, partially obscured from the front of the cabin by a stand of pine trees. If she could reach it unseen, she might be able to take one of Isaiah's horses and escape. Crouching low, Clara made her way toward the trees, moving as quickly as she dared while keeping Emma quiet. She had almost reached the relative safety of the pines when the cabin door splintered with a crash, followed by shouts as the men discovered the house empty. Check the back. Someone yelled, and Clara abandoned stealth for speed, running toward the barn. She had just reached the barn door when a shot rang out, the bullet splintering wood inches from her head. Clara ducked inside, her heart hammering as Emma began to wail, startled by the noise. We just want the deed, Mrs. Sullivan, Joel Blackwell called, his voice closer now. Give us what belongs to us and you can go on your way with that baby. Clara frantically surveyed the barn. 2 horses stood in their stalls, ears pricked at the commotion. She recognized Isaiah's gelding, a sturdy buckskin, and hurried toward it, struggling to open the stall gate with one hand while holding the shotgun in the other. There's nowhere to go, Joel continued, his voice now just outside the barn. Your husband stole from us and we mean to get back what's ours. Thomas won that deed fair and square, Clara found herself shouting back, even as she worked to bridle the buckskin. You killed him for it, a harsh laugh answered her. Fair, nothing about that game was fair, woman. Your husband cheated, had cards up his sleeve. We caught him red-handed. The accusation struck Clara like a physical blow. Thomas, for all his faults, had always prided himself on playing straight. Had he really been desperate enough to cheat? Or was Joel Blackwell simply lying to justify murder? With the bridle in place, Clara had no time for a saddle. She led the horse to a bale of hay, climbed awkwardly atop it, and swung her leg over the buckskin's back, still clutching the shotgun. Emma's cries had subsided to whimpers, the baby somehow sensing the need for quiet. We're coming in, Mrs. Sullivan, Joel called, his patience clearly wearing thin. Last chance to be reasonable. Clara nudged the horse toward the back of the barn where a second, smaller door led out to the corral. If she could make it through that door and into the trees beyond the property, she might have a chance. The main barn doors creaked open just as Clara reached the rear exit. She heard shouts of surprise, then the thunder of gunfire as she burst into the open. Bent low over the horse's neck with Emma protected between her body and the buckskin's mane. Bullets whistled past as Clara urged the horse to a gallop, heading for the tree line 100 yards away. She was halfway there when she heard hooves pounding behind her. They were giving chase. The buckskin was strong but carrying 2, and Clara knew they wouldn't outrun mounted pursuers for long. The trees provided temporary cover, but Clara had no clear plan beyond immediate escape. She didn't know these woods well, having only been on Isaiah's property for a few days. All she could do was push deeper into the forest, hoping to lose her pursuers among the pines. For nearly an hour she rode, changing direction frequently, crossing a shallow stream twice to break her trail. Emma miraculously remained quiet, soothed perhaps by the motion of the horse. The sounds of pursuit faded, then disappeared altogether, but Clara didn't slow. She couldn't risk being caught. As afternoon turned to evening, Clara found herself on unfamiliar high ground, the forest thinning as the terrain became rockier. Exhaustion was setting in, and Emma was growing restless, needing to be fed and changed. They would have to stop soon. Just as Clara was searching for a sheltered place to rest, she heard the distant sound of a horse approaching, moving fast. Heart sinking, she urged the buckskin forward again, though the poor animal was nearly spent. They crested a rocky ridge, and Clara frantically scanned for somewhere to hide. The forest had given way to scattered boulders and scrub brush, poor cover at best. She dismounted quickly, leading the horse behind a cluster of rocks, and prepared the shotgun with trembling hands. The approaching rider grew louder, then suddenly appeared on the ridge behind her. Clara raised the shotgun, finger tensing on the trigger, when a familiar voice called out, "Clara." Isaiah O'Malley pulled his horse to a skidding stop, relief washing over his face as he spotted her. Clara nearly collapsed with the force of her own relief, lowering the shotgun as Isaiah dismounted and rushed to her side. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his eyes scanning her and Emma for injuries. "I got back to the ranch and found the place torn apart, he stopped, unable to finish the thought. "We're all right," Clara assured him, her voice shaking. "They came, but we got away before they could catch us." "Isaiah, what happened?" "You were gone so long, I thought they'd caught you." Isaiah's expression darkened. "They nearly did. I made it to Denver, but the Blackwells have men watching the marshal's office. I had to lay low, then circle back through the mountains to avoid them." He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the terrain. "We can't stay here, they'll be searching these hills by now." "Where can we go?" Clara asked, the enormity of their situation settling over her again. "They'll keep coming as long as they think I have that deed." Isaiah nodded grimly. "I know. That's why we need to change their minds." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. "I found this in the marshal's personal effects store. It was in Thomas's pocket when they brought his body in." Clara stared at the paper in disbelief. "The deed?" "A copy of it," Isaiah confirmed. "Thomas must have made it before the game, maybe suspecting trouble." He tucked the document away again. "It's not legally binding on its own, but it proves the original exists or existed, and it gives us leverage." Hope flickered in Clara's chest for the first time in days. "How?" "We make the Blackwells believe the original deed is somewhere they'll never find it unless they leave you alone," Isaiah explained. "But first, we need to get you and Emma somewhere truly safe." He glanced at the darkening sky. "There's an old line shack about 2 miles from here. We can shelter there tonight and make a plan." The line shack was little more than 4 walls and a roof, dusty and long abandoned, but it offered protection from the elements and prying eyes. Isaiah quickly got a small fire going in the stone hearth while Clara tended to Emma's needs. "You look exhausted," Isaiah observed, offering Clara a strip of dried beef from his provisions. "When's the last time you slept?" "I don't remember," she admitted, accepting the food gratefully. "Everything's been happening so fast." She looked up at him, studying his face in the firelight. A fresh bruise darkened his jaw, and he moved with a stiffness that suggested other injuries. "You're hurt." Isaiah shrugged. "Had a disagreement with one of Blackwell's men in Denver. Nothing serious." "You risked your life going back there," Clara said softly. "Why are you doing all this for us? You barely know me." Isaiah was quiet for a long moment, feeding small branches into the fire. "I had a sister once," he finally said, his voice low. "Catherine. She married young to a man who turned out to be cruel. When she finally got the courage to leave him, taking their baby with her, he hunted them down." His hands stilled. "I was working 2 states away when it happened. By the time I got word and made it back, it was too late." Clara's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry, Isaiah," he nodded, accepting her sympathy. "That was 5 years ago. I swore then I'd never stand by when someone needed help, especially not a woman and child." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "When I saw you in that window, your house burning around you, I didn't think I just acted. And I haven't regretted it for a moment." The sincerity in his voice touched Clara deeply. In that moment, she realized that whatever happened next, Isaiah O'Malley had already fundamentally changed her life, and not just by saving it. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing words were inadequate for what she felt. "For everything." Isaiah held her gaze a moment longer, then looked away, a hint of color rising in his weathered cheeks. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow will come early, and we have plans to make." As Clara settled on the rough blankets Isaiah had arranged for her and Emma, she found herself studying him as he kept watch by the door, his profile illuminated by the dying fire. This man, who had no obligation to help them, had put himself repeatedly in danger for their sake. In the midst of all the chaos and fear, that simple fact gave her a foundation to stand on. For the first time since Thomas's death, Clara felt something beyond grief and fear stirring in her heart, something that, in different circumstances, might have been the beginning of hope. Dawn broke with clear skies and a plan. Isaiah had spent the night considering their limited options and presented his thoughts as they shared a meager breakfast. The Blackwell's power comes from fear and intimidation, he explained. People are too scared to stand against them, so they get away with whatever they want. But if we can get evidence of their crimes to the right people beyond their influence, we might have a chance. What kind of evidence? Clara asked, feeding Emma while listening intently. Their illegal operations extend well beyond rigged card games, Isaiah replied. Rustling, extortion, even murder, but they've been careful to keep their hands clean officially. The territorial marshal in Denver would love to bring them down, but he needs proof. Clara considered this. And you think we can get that proof? How? Isaiah's expression was determined. The Blackwells keep ledgers of their dealings, business records that would incriminate them if found. A friend who used to work for them told me about it years ago, but no one's been able to access them. Where do they keep these records? Their ranch house, about 30 miles from here, in a safe in Joel Blackwell's office. Isaiah watched her reaction carefully. It's dangerous, Clara. I wouldn't suggest it if I saw any other way out of this. Clara looked down at Emma, peaceful in her arms, then back to Isaiah. If we do nothing, they'll keep coming after us. Emma will never be safe. She straightened her shoulders. What's your plan? Isaiah laid it out for her, simple but risky. The Blackwells hosted a monthly gathering at their ranch, a social event that doubled as a demonstration of their power and influence. The next one was in 3 days. With most of their men occupied with guests, security around the house would be lighter than usual. Isaiah would attend the gathering. He'd received invitations before as a local rancher, though he'd always declined while Clara remained hidden nearby. Once I'm inside, I'll create a distraction, he explained. Something to draw attention away from the main house. That's when you'll slip in through the back entrance, make your way to Joel's office and find the safe. And then what? I don't know how to crack a safe, Clara pointed out. Isaiah smiled slightly. You won't have to. My friend mentioned that Joel keeps the combination in a Bible on his desk. Joel's idea of a joke, apparently, since he's never opened a Bible in his life. His expression turned serious again. Once you have the ledgers, get out immediately. We'll meet back at the rendezvous point and ride straight for Denver with the evidence. It was audacious, perhaps foolhardy, but Clara couldn't see a better alternative. What about Emma? I can't take her with me into that house. Isaiah hesitated. There's a woman in Cedar Ridge, Mrs. Patterson. She's a widow who's helped me out before, trustworthy and discreet. We could ask her to watch Emma for the few hours we'll need. The idea of being separated from her daughter, even briefly, filled Clara with dread, but the alternative, bringing Emma into danger, was unthinkable. All right, she agreed reluctantly, if Mrs. Patterson is willing. They spent the day resting and refining their plan before setting out at dusk for Cedar Ridge. Traveling by night reduced their chances of being spotted, though it made the journey slower and more treacherous. They arrived at the small town shortly before dawn and made their way cautiously to a modest house on the outskirts. Mrs. Patterson, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, opened her door to Isaiah's soft knock without hesitation. I thought it might be you, she said, ushering them inside quickly. News travels even out here. The Blackwells have men searching everywhere for a young woman with a baby. She looked Clara over with sharp assessment. You'd be Mrs. Sullivan then, Clara nodded, suddenly uncertain. Isaiah said we could trust you. He's right about that, Mrs. Patterson confirmed. My late husband lost everything to the Blackwells before his passing. I've no love for those devils. She gestured them toward her kitchen table. Now sit and have some coffee while you tell me what foolish plan has brought you to my door at this hour. Over fresh coffee and biscuits, the first proper food they'd had in days, Isaiah explained their intentions. Mrs. Patterson listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "It's madness," she declared when he finished. "Breaking into Joel Blackwell's house, you'll both be killed if you're caught." "We'll be killed anyway if we do nothing," Clara replied quietly. "At least this gives us a chance." Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment. "You've got spine, I'll grant you that," she sighed heavily. "Very well, I'll mind the little one while you're gone, but on one condition." "Name it," Isaiah said. "If you haven't returned by sunrise the day after the gathering, I'm taking the baby and heading for my sister's place in Wyoming," she stated firmly. "I won't have that child orphaned if your plan goes sideways." It was a sobering reminder of the stakes, but Clara appreciated the woman's practical thinking. "That's fair," she agreed. "Her name is Emma. She's generally good-natured, but she doesn't like to be left alone when she's awake." As dawn approached, Clara found it increasingly difficult to prepare for leaving Emma. She held her daughter close, memorizing the weight of her, the smell of her hair, the tiny features that had become her entire world. "We'll be back for her," Isaiah assured Clara as they prepared to leave. "I promise you that," Clara nodded, fighting tears as she handed Emma to Mrs. Patterson. "Take care of her," she whispered. "Like she was my own," the older woman promised. "Now go, both of you, before the town wakes up." They made their way to an abandoned trapper's cabin Isaiah knew of, several miles outside Cedar Ridge, but within riding distance of the Blackwell Ranch. There, they would wait for 2 days until the gathering, finalizing their preparations and gathering their strength. The cabin was even more rudimentary than the line shack had been, but Clara hardly noticed the discomfort. Her thoughts were consumed with Emma, with the risk they were taking, and increasingly with the man who had become her unlikely protector. Isaiah seemed to sense her turmoil, giving her space while remaining a steady presence. He hunted for fresh meat, maintained their small fire, and kept watch while she rested. In the quiet moments between planning and preparation, they talked learning each other's stories in a way their previous circumstances hadn't allowed. Clara learned that Isaiah had come west after his sister's death, unable to remain in a place filled with painful memories. He'd worked various jobs: cowhand, farrier, even a brief stint as a deputy in a mining town before saving enough to buy his small ranch. He'd built the cabin himself, added to his herd each year, and carved out a life of quiet independence. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Pennsylvania, her dreams of becoming a teacher someday, and how she'd met Thomas Sullivan at a county fair when she was 18. Their courtship had been brief and passionate, his ambitious talk of Western opportunities sweeping her into a whirlwind marriage and the long journey to Colorado. "Were you happy with him?" Isaiah asked on the evening before the Blackwell gathering, the question gentle but direct. Clara considered her answer carefully. "At first, yes, Thomas could be charming, exciting. He had such grand visions for our future." She sighed. But the reality of homesteading was harder than he expected. The gambling started as a way to make quick money for supplies, then became something else entirely. By the time Emma was born, he was spending more time in town than at home. "I'm sorry," Isaiah said simply. "The strange thing is," Clara continued, needing to speak the truth aloud, "part of me had already started to let him go even before he died. I'd begun planning how Emma and I might manage on our own." She looked into the fire, guilt mingling with her grief. "Does that make me terrible?" Isaiah shook his head. "It makes you strong. You were thinking of your daughter's future, doing what mothers have always done." His voice softened. "From what I've seen, you're anything but terrible, Clara Sullivan." The way he said her name, with such quiet conviction, made something flutter in Clara's chest. She glanced up to find his blue eyes watching her with an expression that stole her breath: respect, admiration, and something warmer that neither of them was ready to name. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then Isaiah cleared his throat and turned his attention back to preparing his revolver for tomorrow's events. "We should get some rest," he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. "Tomorrow will test us both." Clara nodded, retreating to her bedroll with her thoughts in turmoil. Tomorrow they would risk everything on a desperate plan. If they succeeded, she and Emma might finally be free of the threat hanging over them, and if they failed... She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the steady presence of the man across the cabin. Whatever happened at the Blackwell Ranch, Clara realized she trusted Isaiah O'Malley with her life and her heart, though that was a truth she wasn't yet ready to examine too closely. The Blackwell Ranch was an ostentatious display of ill-gotten wealth, a sprawling two-story house with wide verandas, surrounded by well-kept grounds and impressive outbuildings. By mid-afternoon on the day of the gathering, carriages and riders were already arriving, the men in fine suits and the women in fashionable dresses. Clara and Isaiah watched from a ridge overlooking the property, hidden among the trees as they finalized their approach. "Remember," Isaiah said, adjusting his borrowed suit coat a necessity for blending in with the guests. "I'll signal the distraction by starting a small fire in the hay storage behind the main stables. When you see the commotion, that's your window to get into the house." Clara nodded, her mouth dry with anxiety. She wore her only remaining dress, hastily mended and cleaned as best she could. With her hair pinned up and a borrowed shawl from Mrs. Patterson, she hoped to pass as an unremarkable guest if spotted. "The office is on the ground floor, rear corner of the house," Isaiah continued. "Window faces east. If the door is locked, there's a spare key kept on the top of the doorframe, another of Joel's arrogant habits, according to my source." "And if I'm caught?" Clara asked, needing to hear it again. Isaiah's expression turned grim. "You run, don't wait for me, don't try to help. Get to Mrs. Patterson and Emma and get as far away as possible." It wasn't what she wanted to hear, but Clara knew it was the only sensible plan. Emma had to have at least one parent survive this. "The same goes for you," she insisted. "If things go wrong and you can get away, you take Emma to safety. Promise me." Isaiah held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. "I promise." He checked his pocket watch. "It's time. I should get down there, start mingling before I'm noticed arriving." Before he could move away, Clara caught his arm. "Isaiah," she said, her voice catching slightly, "thank you for everything, whatever happens today." He covered her hand with his own, his touch warm and reassuring. "We'll see this through, Clara, together." Then he was gone, making his way down to the gathering with the easy confidence of a man who belonged there. Clara watched him disappear into the crowd, her heart pounding with fear, and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope for a future beyond this day. For nearly an hour, Clara maintained her position, watching Isaiah move through the gathering with surprising social grace. He accepted a drink, engaged in conversations, and gradually worked his way toward the stables without drawing attention. The moment came with startling suddenness. A shout went up from the stable area, followed by billowing smoke and the alarmed whinnying of horses. Men rushed toward the commotion, Joel Blackwell among them, barking orders as guests watched in confusion. It was time. Clara made her way swiftly down the ridge, approaching the house from the east side where trees provided cover almost to the building itself. With most eyes on the stable fire, she reached the side of the house unnoticed and slipped along the wall until she found the window Isaiah had described. It was partially open, a stroke of luck in the warm afternoon. Clara eased it wider and climbed through, finding herself in a well-appointed study. Bookshelves lined one wall, a massive desk dominated the center of the room, and in the corner stood an iron safe, her target. Working quickly, Clara spotted a Bible on the desk, exactly as Isaiah had described. She flipped it open, finding numbers scratched inside the cover, 162432. With trembling hands, she approached the safe and turned the dial, praying Isaiah's information was accurate. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing stacks of papers and cash. Clara rifled through them, heart racing, until she found what they sought: a leather-bound ledger with entries detailing transactions, names, and amounts. A quick scan confirmed its value. Here were records of bribes, rustling operations, and what appeared to be payments for removals, with dates that aligned with known murders in the territory. Clara tucked the ledger into the hidden pocket she'd sewn into her skirt and carefully closed the safe, returning the dial to its original position. She was replacing the Bible when the study door opened. "Well now, what have we here?" Clara froze at the sound of Joel Blackwell's voice. He stood in the doorway, his red beard neatly trimmed for the occasion, eyes cold as he assessed her. "Mrs. Sullivan, I presume." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "I thought I recognized O'Malley out there. Clever distraction, but not quite clever enough." Clara backed away, mind racing. "I don't know what you're talking about," she attempted, knowing it was futile. Joel laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Let's not insult each other's intelligence. You're here for the deed your husband stole from me." His eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps something else." "You seem to have found my safe interesting." "Thomas didn't steal anything," Clara retorted, anger momentarily overriding her fear. "He won that deed fair and square, and you murdered him for it. Is that what you believe?" Joel moved further into the room, effectively blocking her path to both door and window. "Your husband was a cheater and a fool. The deed was merely a bonus. We would have killed him anyway for trying to swindle us." Clara's back hit the bookshelf. She was trapped, with nowhere to run and no weapon except the small knife concealed in her boot, insufficient against a man of Joel's size. "Whatever you came for, hand it over," Joel demanded, extending his hand. "Do that, and I might let you walk out of here alive." Clara knew it was a lie. Once Joel discovered what she'd taken, he would never let her leave. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any advantage, when a soft tapping came at the window. Joel turned at the sound, momentarily distracted, and Clara seized her chance. She lunged for the heavy brass paperweight on the desk and swung it with all her strength, catching Joel on the temple. He staggered, cursing, as Clara scrambled past him toward the window where Isaiah's face appeared. "Come on," he urged, reaching through to help her. Clara was halfway through the window when Joel recovered, grabbing her ankle and yanking her backward. She cried out, the ledger dislodging from her skirt and falling to the floor. "Isaiah," she called desperately. In an instant, Isaiah was through the window, tackling Joel away from Clara. The two men crashed into the desk, grappling for advantage. Joel was larger, but Isaiah fought with the desperation of a man protecting someone he cared for. "Get the ledger and run," Isaiah shouted to Clara between blows. Clara snatched the fallen book from the floor and turned back to the window, but couldn't bring herself to leave. Isaiah was fighting for his life for her life, and she wouldn't abandon him. Spotting Joel's revolver in its holster as the men struggled, Clara darted forward and pulled it free. The weight of it was unfamiliar in her hands, but she raised it steadily, aiming at the ceiling and firing a single shot. The report was deafening in the confined space. Both men froze, turning to find Clara holding the gun now pointed directly at Joel. "Back away from him," she commanded, surprised at the steadiness of her own voice. Joel's eyes narrowed, calculating his chances. "You won't shoot me," he said, though uncertainty tinged his words. "You don't have it in you." "My husband is dead because of you," Clara replied coldly. "My home is ashes. My daughter nearly died. Don't test what I have in me, Mr. Blackwell." Something in her tone must have convinced him. Joel slowly raised his hands, stepping back from Isaiah, who rose to his feet with blood trickling from a cut above his eye. "We need to go," Isaiah said urgently. "That shot will bring others." Clara kept the gun trained on Joel as they backed toward the window. "If you follow us, if you send your men after us, these ledgers go straight to the territorial marshal," she warned. "Your empire will collapse within a week." Joel's face contorted with rage. "You're dead, both of you. You just don't know it yet." Maybe, Isaiah replied, helping Clara through the window first before following her, but we'll take you down with us. They ran for the cover of trees as shouts erupted from the main gathering. Their horses were hidden in a gully a quarter-mile away, and they reached them just as the first riders began to search the property perimeter. Ride hard, Isaiah instructed as they mounted. Don't stop for anything. They galloped away from the Blackwell Ranch, taking a circuitous route through rough country where pursuit would be difficult. Only when they were several miles clear did they slow to rest their heaving mounts. "Are you hurt?" Isaiah asked, scanning Clara for injuries. She shook her head, still clutching the precious ledger. "No, I'm fine. You're the one bleeding." Isaiah touched the cut on his forehead dismissively. "It's nothing. You were incredible back there, Clara. I've never seen anyone stand up to Joel Blackwell like that." "I had good motivation," she replied, her heart still racing from their narrow escape. "What now? We ride for Cedar Ridge, get Emma, and continue straight to Denver," Isaiah decided. "The territorial marshal is a good man. Once he sees these ledgers, he'll act quickly." The sun was setting as they reached Mrs. Patterson's house, both exhausted but driven by the urgent need to complete their mission. The older woman greeted them with visible relief, Emma sleeping peacefully in a cradle beside her kitchen stove. "I was beginning to worry, Mrs. Patterson admitted, taking in their disheveled appearance and Isaiah's bloodied face. "I take it things didn't go entirely to plan." "Not entirely," Isaiah acknowledged with grim humor, "but we got what we came for." Clara immediately went to Emma, gathering her sleeping daughter in her arms with a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. "Thank you for keeping her safe," she said to Mrs. Patterson, voice thick with gratitude. "She's a darling child," the woman replied warmly. "Now you both look dead on your feet. The marshal can wait until morning. You need rest, and that cut needs tending," she added, nodding at Isaiah's forehead. Clara and Isaiah exchanged glances, weighing the risks of delay against their exhaustion. "A few hours," Isaiah finally conceded. "We'll leave before dawn." Mrs. Patterson nodded approvingly. "I've got stew on the stove and clean bandages in that drawer. Feed yourselves, tend those wounds, and get some sleep. I'll keep watch." The simple kindness of hot food, clean water, and a safe place to rest was almost too much after the intensity of the day. As Clara bathed Emma and prepared her for bed, she found tears streaming silently down her face, tears of relief, exhaustion, and lingering fear. Isaiah found her like that, standing in Mrs. Patterson's spare bedroom with Emma cradled against her shoulder. "Clara," he said softly from the doorway. "Are you all right?" She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Isaiah crossed to her, his presence solid and reassuring as always. "We made it," he reminded her gently. "The worst is behind us now." "Is it?" Clara asked, finally finding her voice. "What if the marshal can't or won't act on the evidence? What if the Blackwells are too powerful even for this?" Isaiah reached out, carefully tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle despite his calloused hands. "Then we'll find another way. I'm not giving up, Clara. Not on you, not on Emma, not on the future you both deserve." The sincerity in his eyes undid her completely. Clara leaned forward, resting her forehead against his chest, Emma secure between them. Isaiah's arms came around them both, protective and tender, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Clara allowed herself to fully feel safe. "Neither am I," she whispered against his shirt. "Giving up, I mean, not anymore." They stood that way for a long moment, the connection between them deepening into something neither had expected when this journey began. When Clara finally stepped back, there was a new resolve in her expression. "Get some rest," she told him. "We have a long ride tomorrow, and Denver's waiting." Dawn found them on the trail again, Emma securely wrapped against Clara's chest as they rode toward Denver. The ledger was hidden in Isaiah's saddlebags, and both were armed and watchful, aware that the Blackwells would have men searching every road. They reached the city by mid-afternoon, its bustling streets and brick buildings a stark contrast to the wilderness they'd traveled through. Isaiah led them directly to the territorial marshal's office, a solid structure near the courthouse. Marshal James Harker was a broad-shouldered man with silver-streaked hair and a reputation for incorruptibility, a rare quality in frontier law enforcement. He listened without interruption as Isaiah and Clara recounted the events of the past week, from Thomas's murder to their theft of the ledgers. "These are serious accusations against powerful men," Harker said when they finished, leafing through the incriminating records. "But if these ledgers are authentic, and they appear to be, they provide exactly the evidence I've been seeking for years." Hope surged in Clara's chest. "Then you'll act on them," Harker nodded, his expression grave. "I'll dispatch deputies to arrest Joel and Samuel Blackwell immediately. But you two will need to remain in Denver as witnesses, at least until the preliminary hearing." It was more than they dared hope for. Isaiah and Clara exchanged relieved glances. "What about Clara's homestead?" Isaiah asked, "without the original deed?" "If the copy you found has Thomas Sullivan's signature and is notarized, it may be sufficient," Harker replied. "Land office might give you some trouble, but with my testimony about the circumstances, you should be able to retain ownership, Mrs. Sullivan." Clara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Thank you, Marshal. Don't thank me yet," Harker warned. "The Blackwells won't go down without a fight, and they still have men loyal to them. You'll need to stay somewhere secure until this is resolved." "I have a friend who runs a boarding house near the church," Isaiah offered. "Discreet, reliable people." Harker approved the arrangement, and by evening, Clara and Emma were settled in a small but comfortable room at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house, with Isaiah taking a room across the hall. The proprietress, a no-nonsense widow with a soft spot for children, took one look at their situation and assigned her most secure rooms, promising extra vigilance from her staff. The arrest of the Blackwell brothers 2 days later sent shockwaves through Denver and the surrounding territories. Several of their men turned evidence in exchange for leniency, further strengthening the case against them. But as Marshal Harker had predicted, others remained loyal, and threats against the key witnesses, especially Clara, began to circulate. For nearly 2 weeks, Clara and Isaiah remained effectively confined to the boarding house, venturing out only with escorts arranged by the marshal. Despite the tension of their circumstances, these days held an unexpected sweetness. Without the immediate danger of pursuit, they had time to simply be together, to learn each other's habits and preferences, to watch Emma grow stronger each day. Isaiah revealed a talent for carving, fashioning a small wooden horse for Emma that became her favorite object to grasp with her tiny hands. Clara discovered that, beneath his stoic exterior, lay a man who could recite poetry from memory and who laughed with his whole body on the rare occasions something genuinely amused him. Their relationship evolved in the quiet moments, Isaiah reading aloud from the newspaper while Clara mended clothing. Clara humming lullabies that brought a peaceful expression to Isaiah's often worried face. Both of them taking turns walking a fussy Emma around the boarding house garden on sleepless nights. It was during one such night, with Emma finally asleep in her makeshift cradle, that Clara found the courage to speak what had been growing in her heart. "What will you do after the hearing?" she asked, standing beside Isaiah at the garden's edge, the night air cool around them. "When you can go back to your ranch." Isaiah was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the distant mountains visible even in the darkness. "I've been thinking about that," he admitted. "The ranch needs work after being abandoned these weeks. The cattle will have scattered somewhat." "Yes," Clara agreed, her heart sinking a little at his practical response. "Of course you'll need to focus on that." Isaiah turned to her then, his expression serious in the moonlight. "What I mean to say, Clara, is that the work would go faster with help. And the cabin. It's small, but it could be expanded, a proper room for Emma as she grows." He paused, seeming to search for words. "What I'm trying to ask, poorly, is whether you might consider making a life there, with me." Clara's breath caught. "Isaiah, I know it's soon," he hurried on. "Too soon, perhaps." You're still grieving Thomas, still adjusting to everything that's happened. And I don't have much to offer except hard work and a piece of land that might be something more someday. His voice softened. But I love you, Clara. I think I have since I saw you in that window with Emma in your arms, brave despite everything. Tears welled in Clara's eyes, not of sadness but of a joy so unexpected it almost hurt. It is soon, she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper, and there will be talk, a widow remarrying so quickly. Isaiah's face fell slightly and he began to step back. I understand, it was presumptuous of me to know, Clara interrupted, reaching for his hand. What I meant was, yes, it's soon, but life out here doesn't wait for proper timing, does it? We've faced death together, Isaiah. We've protected each other, trusted each other. She squeezed his hand. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you too. The smile that broke across Isaiah's face was like sunrise after the longest night. He drew her gently into his arms, mindful of propriety even in their private moment. I want to do this right, he murmured against her hair. Court you properly when all this is over. Clara laughed softly. I think we're well past conventional courting, don't you? You've already seen me at my worst, frightened, desperate, firing a gun at a man. I've seen you at your strongest, Isaiah corrected, and that's the woman I want to build a life with. Their first kiss, when it came, was gentle and questioning, a promise rather than a demand. Clara melted into it, her heart fuller than she'd believed possible after so much loss. When they parted, both were smiling despite the uncertainty still surrounding them. We should return inside, Isaiah said reluctantly. Mrs. Holloway will have my hide if she catches us out here unchaperoned. As they walked back toward the boarding house, hands still linked, Clara felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead the hearing, rebuilding her life, the inevitable gossip facing them with Isaiah beside her seemed not just possible, but right. The preliminary hearing against the Blackwell brothers began 3 days later in Denver's courthouse. Clara testified about Thomas's murder and the subsequent attack on her home, while Isaiah provided evidence about the brothers' other illegal activities. The ledgers proved devastating, detailing years of crimes across the territory. Justice moved swiftly on the frontier when evidence was clear. By week's end, Joel and Samuel Blackwell were remanded for trial, denied bail due to the severity of their crimes and risk of flight. Their remaining loyal men scattered, unwilling to face similar charges. It's over, Marshal Harker told Clara and Isaiah when the hearing concluded. You're free to return home or wherever you choose to go. The land office has accepted the copy of your deed, Mrs. Sullivan, though the property itself is unfortunately beyond salvage. Clara nodded, having already made her peace with the loss of the homestead. Thank you, Marshal, for everything. As they prepared to leave Denver the following morning, Clara filed one final document at the courthouse, a marriage license. The ceremony itself was simple, performed by the local minister with Mrs. Holloway and Marshal Harker as witnesses. Emma, dressed in a new gown purchased with Clara's reward money for helping capture the Blackwells, slept peacefully through her mother's vows. Are you sure about this? Isaiah had asked the night before, giving Clara one last chance to reconsider such a swift remarriage. People will talk. Let them, Clara had replied with newfound confidence. We know the truth of what we've been through together, and Emma deserves a father who will love her as his own. Isaiah's eyes had filled with emotion at that. I already do, he'd assured her. Both of you, you're my family now. And so Clara Sullivan became Clara O'Malley, riding away from Denver toward a future she couldn't have imagined when she'd climbed desperately from that burning window just weeks before. The journey back to Isaiah's ranch took 3 days, made leisurely to accommodate Emma's needs. They arrived at sunset, the small cabin silhouetted against the mountains exactly as Clara remembered. It's not much, Isaiah said as he helped her down from her horse, Emma secure in her sling. It's perfect, Clara replied, meaning it. After everything they'd endured, The simple cabin represented something precious: safety, stability, a new beginning. That night, after Emma was settled in the cradle Isaiah had somehow acquired and transported without Clara's knowledge, husband and wife stood on the porch watching stars emerge in the vast Colorado sky. "What do you think about adding a proper bedroom off the back?" Isaiah asked, his arm around Clara's waist. "Emma will need her own space eventually, and we might." He hesitated, then continued softly, "We might want to give her siblings someday." Clara turned in his embrace, resting her hands on his chest. "I'd like that very much." She smiled up at him. "But there's no rush. We have time now, all the time we need." Isaiah's kiss was a confirmation, a promise of the life stretching before them. Clara O'Malley, no longer running, no longer afraid, kissed him back with all the hope in her heart. Over the next year, the small ranch transformed along with their lives. Isaiah added the promised bedroom and a separate space for Emma, who grew from infant to toddler with remarkable speed, taking her first steps on the very porch where Isaiah had once carried her and Clara to safety. The cattle herd expanded, the garden flourished under Clara's care, and the scars of their earlier ordeals faded, replaced by the everyday rhythms of a life built together. Isaiah taught Clara to ride properly and to shoot with accuracy. Clara introduced schoolbooks to the cabin, determined that Emma would have the education she herself had once dreamed of. News came occasionally from Denver. The Blackwell brothers were convicted and sentenced to long terms in territorial prison. Their property was sold to pay restitution to their victims. Marshall Harker was appointed to a federal position, recognition for his role in bringing down one of the territory's most notorious criminal operations. But these events felt increasingly distant from the life Clara and Isaiah had created. Their concerns now were weather and crops, cattle prices, and Emma's latest accomplishments, the community they were building with neighbors like Mrs. Patterson, who became a frequent visitor and Emma's honorary grandmother. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Isaiah presented Clara with a small box containing a proper ring to replace the simple band they'd acquired in Denver. "I've been saving for it," he explained as she admired the modest diamond. "Wanted you to have something beautiful, something worthy of you." Clara slipped it onto her finger alongside her wedding band. "It's lovely, Isaiah, but you know I've never needed fancy things to be happy here." He smiled, taking her hands in his. "I know. That's just one of the many reasons I fall more in love with you every day." Later that same evening, after Emma was asleep in her room, Clara shared her own anniversary news. She was expecting their second child, due in the spring. Isaiah's joy was boundless. He lifted her in a careful embrace, his eyes shining with tears he no longer felt the need to hide. "A baby," he whispered, one hand resting gently on her still, flat stomach. "Our baby, our family," Clara corrected, holding his face between her hands. "Emma is as much yours as this little one will be. You've been her father in every way that matters." Indeed, Emma, at 18 months already, had Isaiah wrapped around her tiny finger, following him around the ranch and insisting on helping with his chores. She called him Papa, and showed no awareness that he hadn't always been part of her life. That night, lying in the bedroom Isaiah had built with his own hands, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the terror of that burning homestead to the peace of this loving home, from desperate widow to beloved wife and mother, the path had been neither straight nor easy, but it had led her exactly where she needed to be. "What are you thinking about?" Isaiah asked, his voice soft in the darkness. Clara turned to him, finding his outline in the moonlight streaming through their window. "About how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best ones," she replied. "If I hadn't climbed out that window with Emma, I wouldn't have been there to catch you both," Isaiah finished, drawing her closer. "Exactly," Clara murmured, settling against his chest. "And I can't imagine any life better than the one we've found together." Their son, James Thomas O'Malley, was born the following April. a healthy, strong baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. Emma, now too, appointed herself his dedicated protector, insisting on helping with every aspect of his care. As the years passed, the O'Malley Ranch prospered, eventually expanding to 3 times its original size. Clara established a small school in their home, teaching not only Emma and James but neighboring children who would otherwise have gone without education. Isaiah's reputation as a fair businessman and skilled rancher grew throughout the territory. When statehood came to Colorado in 1876, he was asked to serve on several local committees, helping to establish regulations that would protect small ranchers against the cattle barons who sought to dominate the industry. Through it all, through droughts and blizzards, through the birth of their 3rd child, a daughter named Catherine after Isaiah's sister, through illnesses and setbacks and triumphs, Clara and Isaiah remained each other's foundation. Their love, born in crisis and danger, had deepened into something enduring and unshakable. On summer evenings, they would often sit on their expanded porch, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set behind the mountains. Sometimes, Clara would remember that desperate night when she'd climbed out a window with her baby, not knowing if they would survive the fall. And always, Isaiah seemed to sense when those memories surfaced, drawing her closer with the same gentle strength he'd shown when he'd first promised to catch them both. "We made it," he would remind her quietly, his voice still able to calm her fears after all these years. "Yes," Clara would agree, watching their children living proof of the life they'd built from the ashes of her old one. "We caught each other." And in those simple words lay the truth of their journey. That sometimes falling can lead to being caught, that endings can become beginnings, and that the love born in a moment of courage can sustain a lifetime of happiness.